Hello and welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. I'm Ed Rabyd, a former pastor turned atheist, now compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Feel free to like or dislike the videos you see fit, so feel free to hit those buttons. Feel free to comment below, and I would appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell for more content as it is released. You're also free to share my videos as much as you like, because the purpose of this channel is educational in regards to deconversion and atheist issues and any issues related to those issues. Hearty shout out to the Rabyd Nation. Join the nation by hitting that subscribe button, and if you want to buy your citizenship into the Rabyd Nation at different levels, hit that join button. Your options will be presented. I do want to apologize. I'm a little bit under the weather, so my voice sounds a little bit different, but hopefully we can get through this video. Welcome to Decon Friday, Decon being short for deconstruction. I have stated before that I feel that deconversion as a whole is a two-step process. Part of it is deconstruction, which is taking apart all the other things that we used to have and maybe reconstructing them just a little bit. And then the other part is true reconstruction, where you're rebuilding your life without all the trappings of religion and faith and all the rest of it. And so the whole deconversion journey becomes a constant process of deconstructing things, because sometimes you don't even know something's there until something comes up. You go, oh, that's the way I used to think. And I need to discard that because that's based on faith and religion, and then reconstructing, finding reasonable reasons to live in the way you live, and so on and so forth. So today I want to look at purity culture, and I'm going to talk about my own deconstruction from purity culture and some of the things that it helped have an effect on me, and why I no longer, of course, follow it, and some of the things that I've opened up and allowed me to be a lot more freer about sex and sexuality since my deconversion process started. But some of the things I had to deconstruct that affected me even as I got older, there's about 5 things I'm going to list here today. Of course, there's many, many more when it comes to purity culture. Purity culture is like this real octopus kind of tendril thing that'll grab you on a lot of different levels. So it's kind of, it's deep, okay? And I'm not an expert, so I want to make that abundantly clear right out the gate. If you're really struggling as a deconverted person with purity culture issues, I strongly, go and contact Recovering from Religion and get a therapist, because trust me, it's worth the money. But in this case, I'm simply relating some stuff to you that between therapy and my own personal walk out of faith that I saw inhibited my way of thinking about sex and sexuality clearly, that was taught to me by my religion, and how I feel about it now that allows me to start moving into reconstruction. Okay, so, and reconstructing my life along those lines. Now, I have to take us all back to when we were kids, when we were teenagers. Usually our first talk when we talked about sex is you're about, like 11-ish, 12-ish, and the church would start talking to you about these issues. And the adults always seemed a little bit embarrassed about it, but it was like, okay, we're going to get this information. I remember my parents handed me a book called Almost 12 at that time, and I read through it, and, I don't know, I hit puberty a little bit earlier than most kids, so a lot of this stuff I'd explored a little bit on my own. I ended up having a couple sources of sexual information. One was the church, and the other was, several copies of Playboy that I had smuggled in under my bed at night. So that kind of duality that we all had back then. But the purity culture thing really hit me hard, and there was a spiritual element to it, and they always focused on that spiritual element. And the number one thing that they taught us was virginity was special and important and spiritual, and you had to maintain it and give your virginity on your wedding night to the other person, okay? And I'm fairly certain that the girls probably got this talk harder than the guys, but we still got it pretty hard. There was almost, with the guys, it was almost, yeah, you really should be a virgin on your wedding night, wink, wink, and knowing that that probably wouldn't happen for most of us. It really created this spiritual aura around virginity, like it was something special. And then, of course, they said, well, if you don't do that, okay, then the more sex you have before marriage, the lesser of a spouse that you're going to be once you get to marriage, the lesser of, nobody wants to, like, I think with girls is like, nobody wants to, eat up a piece of, used chewing gum or, there's all kinds of weird things that happened with that purity culture. They did the same with guys, but it was a little bit different. Um, this idea that, okay, we've got this, this sexual activity that we have. So the more we do this before we actually, have that marriage covenant, the more lesser spirituality it's going to have in that moment. The specialness of the wedding night is going to be gone and that sort of thing. And so there was that element to it. Thirdly, proper marriage, proper sexuality. You can only find that in one man and one woman for the rest of your life. So your options in sexual fulfillment are down to one option pretty much. And so that meant that we really didn't think about other sexual options or other things like that. So it was just more of a, this is what you can do, this is what's proper, this is what's right. The fourth thing that was really damning, I think, to me personally, this is the worst one that hit me hardest, is you should only date or marry inside of the faith. Okay, don't be unequally yoked to unbelievers. Well, when you grow up in a small town and there's only a few churches that your church approves of that you can date in, that kind of limits down the pool of available people. And for me, that kind of took down, my whole high school. I mean, I graduated with a class of like 140. There would have been, roughly 70 girls that I, plus other classes that I could have dated. But when you got it down to the few that were in my religion, that left, maybe 10 at the most in my small town that I could date. And that, of course, was on them too. They could only date certain guys, and I'm sure the pool was very small for them. And a large part of this is why I think this affected me long term, is because I ended up marrying a woman that was of the faith when other women would have probably been more compatible with me. It was just that I felt she was the best option given what I had. And I don't know, I always feel like my options were focused down into a little narrow pit. And that kind of left it down. I know a lot of other people out there are going to tell me similar stories. You're more than welcome to share your stories in the comments about how purity culture kind of robbed you of certain things, because I think it does. And then, of course, there was always the spiritual thing, number 5. Once you have sex with that person, you're spiritually bonded to that person, even if you end up marrying somebody else. That's always going to be, a part of who you are and what you are. And, there's this spiritual bond that's formed. So you want to make sure it's only with that one person you're going to spend the rest of your life with. So there's no sexual exploration, okay, in purity culture. And looking back at it, I can see how it really made my view of sexuality and sex in general negative, tainted it right out the gate. Because it wasn't about enjoyment or, there's always the procreative side that you have to be warned against. Nowadays, I have a very different view of it, of course, but I'll get to that in a minute. But deconstructing this idea that virginity is spiritual and special, that the more sex you have, the less value you have as a sexual partner. The only place to have that is one man, one woman. You need to stay in the faith, and once you sexually bond with that person, that's a spiritual bond too. And it all sounds very romantic and nice, and I think that's why a lot of girls buy into this, because it sounds really romantic, and a lot of guys buy into it for the same reason. I'm going to look at it a little bit differently, and what I had to deconstruct is taking each one of these points and getting a heavy dose of truth. And the heavy dose of truth is there's nothing spiritual or special about virginity. It just means you haven't had sex yet. That's it. And once you narrow it down to that thing, it just kind of gets rid of all the baggage about virginity being special or holy or whatever. and there seems to be this fascination with virgins anyway, particularly virgin girls. That's kind of a little bit perverted to me now that I think about it. But when you really look at, looking at these things that way, it brings you back down to the human level, the real element, which is virginity just means you haven't had sex yet. And I'm not saying that that shouldn't be something you think about when you're a young person and you're thinking about sex for the first time, but it is something that you need to realize that if you have sex with the wrong person or it isn't an enjoyable experience or whatever, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. You didn't waste your virginity on somebody. Okay, you just started having sex and you had a bad experience. And that can help you get over a lot of things. Number two, I had to really say, does having more sex make you a bad partner? There's a lot of argument there. I think there have been some studies about pair bonding, and the more sexual partners you have, the more difficult both sexes, any sex really, to pair bond. And I think that's one of those things that is true about it, but at the same time, I don't think that, you have a lousy first experience and you break up with that person. If you're really searching for a relationship long term, I guess that's one thing. If you're just interested in hookup culture, I think that's another matter. But those are decisions you can make your own. It doesn't devalue you as a sexual partner, as a person, just because you had a lot of sex or very little sex or whatever. There's no way to quantify what that means. It's just a matter of opinion. And then thirdly, I had to realize that there are other sexual relationships that can be as fulfilling, if not more fulfilling, than the one man, one woman in the bonds of holy matrimony for life. I think sexual exploration has a value. I think you have this value of looking at sex in a little different way, who your partners are. A lot of people, a lot of women find themselves are not attracted to guys, attracted to other girls. A lot of guys find they're attracted to other guys. And some people like, I like both sexes equally. Or, there's other people that are just asexual. They don't have any attraction. Having those options in front of you and allowing yourself to explore means that you're actually going to get something that will make you happier and much more fulfilling in the long run. I think that's something that has been demonstrated now with the more openness to the LGBTQ community. And I think a lot of people that grew up in purity culture didn't really get that. Marrying only inside your faith really kind of guarantees the indoctrination. So to be honest, I think you should chuck faith and then just marry somebody based on compatibility and whether you have the same goals and the same objectives. And I realize that religion and moral philosophy and all that can be dividing lines for a lot of married couples, but I also would say, why is marriage always the option? I think, for me, I'll talk about me in a minute because I always end these things with where I'm at on these issues, so just so everybody understands where I'm at. But it doesn't seem to me that there's other types of relationships that could open things up of an ideological nature. I know people that are on opposite sides of the political spectrum that are married to each other and don't even have faith at all. So it can work. And I know other places where it's complete disaster. In my case, I think the lack of faith on my part was one of the death nails. I think, this area is one of those big death nails for my own marriage. And finally, having sex with somebody doesn't bond you to them forever. It's not a spiritual bond. And once I got all that stuff out, that's all basically the wrecking balls that smashed into the other five things. Virginity isn't special. It doesn't matter how much sex you have. There are many possible sexual relationships outside of one man and a woman. You don't have to marry inside the faith necessarily, and you don't have to think of yourself bonded to a person just because you have sex with them. For me, this opened up a lot of possibilities and a lot of thoughts. I've deconverted, I've explored a lot of sexual options and my own sexuality a little bit more through both therapy and just on my own. And I would have to say that I'm still a heterosexual male. I've had two homosexual experiences, one when I was a teenager and another later on in life. And it's not that I found them distasteful. It was just, it was kind of meh. It didn't faze me at all. It wasn't something I was attracted to, and it didn't, light my fire. Sorry, girls still light my fire, guys. I know some of you out there, but it's more of a, to me, I just find the female of the species more attractive to me from a sexual point of view. And so there's that. And then as far as sexual relationships, I think I could handle a monogamous relationship again. I just don't think marriage is going to be a part of it. I think marriage is a legal contract, and as a libertarian, I don't really understand why the state is involved in it. And I don't think it's necessary to go to the state or a church or whatever to have two people make a vow of commitment to each other. I think if I make another vow of commitment to a woman, it'd probably be in the backyard, and I would do a pagan ceremony before I do a Christian one. I'd have some person just wrap our arms on a cord, and we would say our own vows to each other, and then kiss and whatever, and have a party afterwards. I think that would be more. I don't think I'll ever get a marriage license again, and I don't think I'll do a lot of things. The other relationship that I've kind of opened up to is poly. That's why I can fly the poly flag a little bit, because I don't get jealous and I don't get too upset. I've been in love with 3 women over my span of my life, and all of them are either on their own or with somebody else. I'm happy for them. I'm not jealous of the other guy or who the other guy might be. I'm just not that way. And so jealousy to me is the enemy, of good relationships. And so, I don't get possessiveness, I guess, is my point. And so learning not that this isn't a bonding or a possession of the other person, deconstructing that and knocking that out just opens up like, okay, if I'm with this person, I'm with this person. They're not stuck here and I'm not stuck here, okay? But it also opens up to the possibility of some sort of poly relationship. And I would probably go something more formal. I'm a big fan of Robert Heinlein. I think I've mentioned that before. And he had a kind of poly in one of his books, The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, where the main character is part of a line marriage. And basically, the first married couple started it, and they added a second couple and a third and a fourth and a fifth. And, basically, it's still a marriage type, and it's still very heterosexual in the book, but it doesn't change the fact that, one night, one husband can sleep with all the wives and one wife can sleep with all the husbands. It was kind of a, mix and match kind of thing. But they were all married, and when they had kids, they all considered themselves parents of the kids, regardless of who had the child. So it was kind of an interesting situation. I think I could do something formal like that, but I don't think an informal poly would bother me. I need structure, I need order, and I need routine. So that would probably be different. But I could handle that, but if I fall into another monogamous, I'm good with that too. So it's kind of opened up the possibilities of what I think relationships would be happy for me. I don't get as possessive about these things. I think deconstructing this stuff gets you rid of the possessiveness. You don't possess the other person. You don't own their sexuality. The only sexuality you own is yours. Okay, and then everybody else is free to be who they want. And getting rid of all the purity culture nonsense allows you to see, okay, not a virgin anymore. Not that that's important. I'm not, my body count is still 1, by the way. I've been in love with 3 women, but I only slept with one of them for 32 years. So that's kind of, where I'm at. I'm very selective, I guess. I don't want my body count by the end of my life to be more than 3 or 4, okay, because I'm more interested in focusing on a long-term relationship than anything else. And so it's kind of it's opened up the possibilities for me, and I don't think of sexuality as spiritual or using up my sexuality like it's a used rag or something. I don't view it that way. I think that explaining that way is complete garbage now. And so knocking all that out, just by deconstructing it, it opens you up to new possibilities. So hopefully my story there a little bit and some of my observations will be helpful to some of you. I know a lot of you struggle with this, particularly, those who've gone through purity culture and a church that was very fundamentalist or whatever. Just be mindful, that deconstructing this stuff can really help you. Pushing all those attitudes aside, get rid of them, knock them down, can just open things up for you, and then you're free to explore. So, just make sure that you understand that. And the only thing I really concern myself these days with when I tell people, about sex or anything, just, be safe and be consensual. Okay, don't be doing stuff, that's mean-spirited, mean or general, and make sure you're safe while you're doing it. Okay, because there are some pitfalls to sexuality and sex. So make sure you're keeping yourself safe. Well, that's all I have for today. I'm sorry for the voice. I've got one of these nasty little colds, and I'm going to keep trying to do videos of it. As long as I have a voice, I'll try to talk. But thank you very much for stopping by and listening to me. Thank you once again for all the support you guys have given. Like, share, subscribe, join the nation, become a citizen. Appreciate all of that stuff. And always live your best life. You only get one go around. Make sure it's a good one. Don't waste your time in the trappings of religion and all the stuff, the time, the opportunities, the money that you can waste on it. Get rid of it out of your life and follow a more rational course, and I think you'll be more happy for it. And as once again, thanks for stopping by, and I'll catch you next time.